Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast. I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Troy Wyatt of Seattle Entertainment Group. Troy, it's great to have you on the show.
It's great to be here.
Definitely super excited to have you on. And before we jumped into the interview, I want to read a little bit more about Troy so you can hear about all the awesome things that he's doing. And Troy is a Native American entrepreneur born in Washington State. He specializes in sustainable talent buying and building profitable Indian casino entertainment programs. His contributions to the tribal gaming industry have been acknowledged in publications from companies like 500 Nations, Indians.com, and Indian Country Today. He has worked with legendary entertainers such as Ringo Starr, Darius Rucker, Griffin, and many more celebrities throughout his career. As a child, he was infatuated with musicals such as Little Shop of Horrors, Grease, Singing in the Rain, and Under the Cherry Moon. Troy, it's great to have you on the show. Are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
Oh, I'm excited. It's Troy Wyatt Teetsta, Stakwabu Chud, Tulal Chud, Zizalalich, Tibad Chud. Hello, my name is Troy. I'm Snoqualmie Indian and from Seattle, Washington, and I'm a proud father.
Awesome. Troy, thank you so much for that. I truly appreciate, hearing the native tongue and hearing like all the awesome things that you're doing. So to kind of kick everything off, I wanted to rewind the clock a little bit, hear a little bit more on how you got started, what I call your CEO story.
For sure. So, honestly, it was a year after I started working for my tribe's casino, and I kind of, was ready to move on, and I was in a different department at the time, and an opportunity opened up and I've always been in entertainment, but I hadn't worked a lot in casino entertainment. So I took an opportunity, and it was one of those times where, you have two options. You can kind of leave a company or try something different. And I decided to take this internship, and it was making like $3 less an hour. It was hourly at the time. And around that time, I, was kind of thinking either I'm going to stay here and, drive myself crazy doing this forever, or I got to, break the cycle. So I took the internship, not knowing what would come of it. And like 2 days after I accepted the internship, the gal that was supposed to be training me basically put in her notice. So the tribal development manager at the time, and she's still a tribal development manager, her name is Takako Wright. She said, hey, do you want to get trained up for a full-time position? And I got kind of excited because I was like, this is a cool opportunity. Had I not taken a chance, took a risk, I wouldn't have been exposed to the casino marketing department the way I have been. So, you fast forward almost 10 years now, and after building up a bit of a kind of portfolio of experience and exposure to casino entertainment, I noticed there were some things that weren't quite right with our program, and that's how I kind of got the passion to try to correct them, not just at our casino or our tribe, but at other properties as well. So I started quietly collecting content and pictures and stuff from the events that I produced and helped produce, and started to launch my company from there.
Nice. I definitely appreciate that. Thank you so much for telling that story, because I think so many times we can get stuck in waiting for the lane to open, so to speak, but sometimes you have to make those bold decisions, and sometimes we're like, okay, well, it's $3 or it could be $30 or whatever per hour we're leaving on the table. But a lot of times taking those chances, making those investments is really where that opportunity comes from. So I appreciate you for telling that.
Absolutely. And the cool thing about that is, we're our worst enemy, right? So our perception is reality. And I find for myself, the hardest thing for me is to overcome other people, not so much anymore, but everyone's opinion of what I'm trying to do. Often people try to poke holes in what you're doing, and you put your own barriers up, but you can also overcome those barriers. One of the things that I really inspired me was there's no other Native American advocates really doing tribal casinos entertainment buying for tribal casinos. So to know that, I was kind of carving this lane out, it made me want to push myself even further, So I didn't know this originally when I took the internship, but had I not taken that internship, I wouldn't have developed this like burning passion to help Indian country the way I have.
Yeah, and I love that you've been able to kind of do that. And I think so many times too, we forget that, I guess boldness to sometimes, lean into creating your own lane is infectious. So a lot of times I'm a big believer and it creates a lot of momentum. So once you start making that bold decision, and especially if it works out, or sometimes even if it doesn't work out as well as we want, I think it still gives us that energy, for lack of a better term, that keeps us going and creating, our own lane and our own path.
Absolutely, absolutely. And your actions, your thought follows actions. So you have to act first, and then your thought like rewires itself. Your brain rewires itself to follow your actions. And a lot of people think it's the other way around. They say, "Oh, if I just think it first, then I will follow and do it." But that's not necessarily true. And I've got a ton of different mentors, and one's like a digital mentor that I followed over the years, and he talks a lot about the cognitive bias. And I think about that so often because that bias is one of the things that really blocks us from reaching our goals. And a good example is, when I say thought follows action, like if someone's walking down the street, for example, and they're smoking a cigarette, and say it was you and I was smoking a cigarette. I don't smoke, but if you said, "Hey man, you should stop smoking that cigarette," and I said, "Oh, well, it's going to kill you one day," or something like that, my mind, you've probably heard this before, like 100% of the time, people say, "Oh no, I'm going to get hit by a bus or something else is going to kill me," right? And that's because it's easier to change the way you think than it is to change the way you act. And if that wasn't the case, you or I would just put the cigarette out and say, "Oh man, you're right, this is going to kill me." So it's kind of like rationalizing, but the cognitive bias is one of those things that if you don't just do it and you think about it too much, you'll worry about perceptions and feelings. And like I said, you don't get that momentum. But I lean into those discomforts and those things that really are hard for me, like the obstacles, right? Because I know the more I change and the more I challenge myself, the stronger I get and the smarter I get. And this was definitely one of those times is, I could take a chance and it might have been a one in a lifetime chance. It might have not been, so you're definitely right though.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that and love that you mentioned that as well too, and being able to kind of lean into those things and take that action. And sometimes I think we astound ourselves by some of the things we're able to create. That sometimes we might have those thoughts that block us from leaving. We're able to do that, but when you do it again, it creates that energy. So I know you've been able to lean into your company, your organization, all the awesome things you're doing with the Seattle Entertainment Group. Can you take us through a little bit more on how that works, how you support your clients and work with them?
Yeah, so we provide talent buying and casino entertainment consulting. This covers, everything from production, hospitality, travel logistics, booking, and selling contract or facilitating contracts with the agencies. On average, we've saved a little over $1 million, 1.3 million each year on talent buying with our consulting services. And this is done through, being mindful with production, talent buying, and the hospitality, like I mentioned, and also through, I guess, thoughtful actions with our entertainment planning overall. And I think a lot of people so casino entertainment's one of the newer venues in the industry, right? Like tribal casinos aren't that old, arguably 20 years or less, where coliseums, theaters, big convention centers have been around a lot longer. So there's a lot of pitfalls that still exist in the industry. And coming into it, at the program that I started off in, which I still have a hand in currently, you notice how things are they're not done the same, right? So unless you have that outsider perspective, I was a DJ for a lot of my, earlier years in entertainment, and I came at it from a performer side of the perspective, so I was working with a manager and a booker and all these things. So I kind of had a different perspective than like someone who's working in the casino world. So I sized up, oh, why are we paying this much for the production gear? Why are we paying this much for the talent? Why? Once I started asking these questions, I was really able to refine the kind of products that I wanted to provide in my entertainment company. And I'm a liaison, I'm a consultant, but I'm also like, a member of the Indian Nation, First Nations that is got a vested interest in what's happening with these revenue dollars, because for me, it's really personal. The money that my tribe makes helps funds programs that support me and my child and other members in the community. So it's very personal. And I find that kind of translates in when I'm servicing my clients or helping clients achieve their goals financially.
Yeah, and what I hear, and I don't definitely don't want to put words into your mouth. It's kind of like it sounds like an ownership from more than just I have a business. It's more of a pride, your heritage, all of those things that are incorporated into those decisions. And it sounds like when you're servicing, your clients and you're working on, building, innovative practices, whatever it might be that people aren't doing, asking those why questions. It is more than just okay, this is makes businesses, but it sounds like it's also something that has.
Yeah. So can you hear me? It sounded like there was a little disruption there.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, so there is a deeper kind of a meaning for it to me. It's family, it's very personal. I've kind of got a personal story that I share sometimes. So my grandma, who was Native as well, is where I get the tendency from, died from alcoholism very early in her like mid 60s. And there's a lot of pain and trauma that I recognized in her eyes. She had beautiful turquoise eyes, really dark Native features, and just a beautiful woman all the way around, big heart, kind spirited. She died from alcoholism, and I'd like to think that I speak to that $1.3 million that we saved on average for these tribal casinos, and it's like, had we had that $1.3 million in our bank account for my particular tribe, maybe my grandma could have got more help from that. Maybe she could have had some of the resources that she didn't have access to at the time. And I know I'm not the only individual or tribe that has had that experience where there's a lack of resources or financial aid for those particular situations. And not just tribes that have casinos, but tribes in general, right? Like if you look at saving $1 million for any program in anywhere, like that money, especially if it's a family business, you can bet your bottom dollar that it's going to be used to help, support the community. And if not directly the community, the other parts of the outside community, the cities and the governments that rely on these tax dollars, or pillars in the community that rely on our donations. So it is really personal. And I think that and you're on the outside looking in, if you're just a talent buyer, production company looking to make a quick buck, you see blood in the water. And that's a lot of the times because there's no advocates out there that are directly, representing natives or their casino. There's no, I guess, reason for them to negotiate a better rate or to try to come in lower than the competition, especially if you're paid on commission, right? Like, why would you undercut yourself if you know that you're just going to get this huge paycheck no matter what? So you're right, but that's the long story of why I feel so deeply invested in it, is because it does hit home and it's very personal.
Yeah, I appreciate you for sharing that. And I think so many times we forget about the quote unquote, I like to say, the human aspect of business, of why people do the things that they do. So I appreciate you so much for sharing that, and how that kind of is that North Star, it sounds like, or at least foundation to your business and why you do some of the things, and a great example of that. So would you consider that to be what I like to call your secret sauce, the thing you feel kind of sets you apart and makes you unique? It could be for yourself personally or the business, or a combination of both. But do you think that that strong foundational pull is what you feel sets you apart?
Yeah, so I think personally, one of the things, and there's quite a few, I think personally, I've got like a burning passion to help Indian country, but that's just one of the key, I guess, kind of indicator, or one of the personal traits I have. But one of the other things is I've never met a casino talent buyer who has actually worked within the casino marketing department. Being able to intelligently speak to core gaming objectives and what drives the actual revenue is important. And if you don't know what ADT is, which is average daily theo, or the GGR, gross gaming revenue, or net gaming revenue, the NGR, or CPA, cost per acquisition, these gaming acronyms, which everything's an acronym nowadays, I can't stand it, but customer lifetime value, these are things that marketing professionals within the gaming industry understand. Now, it's one thing to know casino or just entertainment, to go, I can book an act and put them in a venue and get the lighting people, call them, all that stuff. But it's another to speak intelligently to what you're doing and why you're doing it, right? You're trying to drive business with it. But if you can't speak or understand, this is what helps wealthy people and successful people be successful, which is really, it's just vocabulary, understanding words and how to use them, right? It's one of the most powerful tools, is knowing how to use your words. But uneducated talent buyers will always reference one key phrase, which is the drop. How much money is like put into the bank at the end of the night, or counted, whatever you want to call any casino executive or CEO that may see this video or venue in a casino, if you hear that from a talent buyer, run the other direction. Like, this is a red flag, because that means you're only looking at the bottom half of the funnel, just the last part of it, right? But as you know, business is like, it's 90% up here and then 10% of what comes out of the bottom half, which is your little nugget of revenue, or if you're a super profitable company, a big nugget. But all the work's done in the upper half, right? So there's a lot of moving parts to casino entertainment, and if you haven't worked inside a casino environment for any considerable amount of time, you're just not going to know what it's like to operate one successfully, or understand or care how the money's being spent after the fact, right? So I think, again, it kind of brings it back to being very personal, but having kind of another level of experience within the industry is very useful for me. I find it's helped me communicate with tribal council more effectively, casino executives more effectively. I wasn't always a numbers guy, but after studying, these metrics and just understanding player values and slot handles and all these things, have really helped me separate myself from some of the other talent buyers that are out there. And to be fair, a lot of this stuff is pretty new, like most of the talent buyers in the industry are much older than myself. Not saying that I'm any better or they're any worse. I've just gathered a different set of skills in a shorter amount of time. And that's the important part of mentorship. I'm kind of going off topic here, but you accelerate that learning curve when you can learn from the best and the worst in a short amount of time. And so I encourage people that are watching this podcast to, just learn as much as you can, rely on, make war with a multitude of counselors, and always look for more resources and never stop learning,
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you sharing that. And what was coming to mind for me was like, I think so many times in industries or in business, we don't look holistically at the entire business. We think in silos, that this only affects this, as you mentioned, the drop. I'm not as familiar with the jargon in the industry or the acronyms, but I think it's so important to have and understand that holistic part, so that when you are potentially recommending something, you're looking holistically at all the different aspects. And if you don't do that, you may get that quote unquote win that day, but you may not get that win over time. So I think to have that awareness and to have the hunger and the desire to kind of lean on those people that have that expertise, it allows you to set not just yourself up for success, but also everything you're involved with in the organization, the people within it. So definitely appreciate that secret sauce.
Yeah, and it's that thinking holistically that's missing in a lot of tribal gaming, right? The likelihood of what happens is people within the tribal gaming industry, a lot of the executives, not all of them, but many of them that I've worked directly with are very ego driven, right? And they don't want to work with other casinos, other tribes. They're just like, they want to be the best at it, right? And it's that separation and that division that has really hurt us. And it's also separating from other venues and other theaters and stuff like that as well. But thinking holistically to bring it all back together, it's like, it helps. You can lobby buying power, between venues. You can leverage routing. You can prevent overpaying. If, this is really common in tribal gaming where, let's just say you're booking a George Thorogood concert, Bad to the Bone. Like, they pay, $35,000 at the theater down the road, and then next state over or wherever they're routing through, charge a tribal casino $70,000 or something, twice as much. And it's that veil of mystery that, oh, okay, it's a good, sounds like a good act, seems like a decent price. How do I reference that? And it's one of the reasons why I've worked so hard to maintain. I've got a celebrity price sheet on one of my blog posts, because it's just that level of transparency. I've connected with so many other casino talent buyers, other venue operators, just to maintain this list. And I encourage anybody that has got pricing to send it my way. I'll post it or add it to it. It just helps other communities, right? And there's other ways to think holistically besides that transparency element, right? Like, I like to balance entertainment programs with a good mixture of high profile entertainment acts, which are kind of expensive, but you also got to know, like, where's your sweet spot, right? How much can you spend regularly and have a chance at making your money back without just throwing money out the door? So I like to balance entertainment programs with a lot of tribute entertainment and tribute acts, which are nostalgic and they offer kind of a novelty appeal. People, you don't have to go and spend $250,000 on Bon Jovi or, whatever his pricing might be right now, to book Bon Jovi. You can book non-Jovi, which is a tribute act that like I manage, and get virtually the same appeal and sell more affordable tickets, you know? So that balance and understanding, like you don't got to swing for the fences every time you put a show on your stage is pretty important. But unfortunately, tribal casinos get really wrapped up in vanity bookings. They see a cool act and they want to be the property that puts that act in their ballroom. And the problem with that is, you know, if you're spending $150,000, you know, on an act, and you've only got 1,000 seats, you got to scale those tickets at like $200 to make your money back, and like also be able to comp some of them for your players. So what ends up happening is you'll see all these big swing for the fences in someone's entertainment program. They're not balancing, they're mitigating the risk with lower tribute costs, you know, or tribute band expenses. And so they end up with this huge deficit at the end of the year, you know, $1, $2, $3 million at the end of the year. And they're wondering, well, how did this happen? How are we losing this much money or spending this much? And some people say, oh, and sorry, I'm getting a little bit off topic here, but this is all part of the secret sauce, in my opinion, is just knowing how to right size your entertainment program and think holistically, like you said. You know, they think of that $2 or $3 million deficit, or one, whatever you want to call it, and they'll say, oh, well, we made it up on the gaming floor. Like we made a bunch of money from the players that we comp tickets for. Well, that's not always the case. I mean, you can't reasonably, and this is an example, like if you owned a gas station, Gresham, and you sold a bunch of gasoline at a discounted price because you wanted to mark up the bubble gum inside the gas station to make your money back. That's not how business works, you know what I mean? The gaming revenue is anything but guaranteed at tribal casinos, and it's extremely hard to manipulate that behavior when they're spending their money. Gambling is ritualistic, and a lot of times a player will skip like a Tuesday afternoon to come Saturday and spend the same money. So did you increase the drop? Probably not. You just robbed your play from earlier in the week. And those are the things that I really pay close attention to as much as I can when I'm looking at the numbers. It's like, yeah, you saw an increase on the day, but you lost money during the week, so it's the same thing. So it's really important just to understand, like you said, holistically what you're doing and why, and being able to be intentional with all your decisions. Otherwise, you're going to end up upside down in your program.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I appreciate you for breaking that down and being able to kind of understand the different pieces of how they intertwine and how you make decisions and what the impact they could have or not have. So it's so important to have that knowledge. And I love that transparency piece that you mentioned as well, too, because I think that is starting to be more of the way of business in all industries as well. So definitely appreciate that. And so I wanted to switch gears a little bit. And I want to ask you for what I call a CEO hack. So this could be like an app, a book, or a habit that you have, but what's something that makes you more effective and efficient?
Well, I guess I've kind of understood, I've really developed a way of thinking of marketing that helps me really target the way I spend my marketing money, my energy, my efforts. And, you know, casino entertainment, essentially in my company, I focus on casino entertainment, which is just a form of marketing, right? And I realized that all marketing is about controlling, manipulating, or altering the outcome. That's all it is. It's not about making money or getting people to buy things. You're trying to control the outcome. And, you know, it's partially influenced by one of my mentors was talking to me about this. And I just find that the sooner you understand how to do this in your industry, the sooner you can figure out how to control the outcome, the less time you'll waste trying to reach your goals and your clients' goals, right? And to break that down even further, the two types of marketing, there's two, you know, basically two that I believe in, you know, which are direct marketing and brand marketing. And everything will fall into, as a marketer, as, you know, one of those two buckets. Obviously, direct marketing is, you know, something you can quantify where you get results and you can attribute the spend, the ad spend. That'd be like a mailer where someone redeems a coupon or whatever, or an email that has a bounce back offer, whatever it is. Direct marketing, directly sent to you, attributable to your expense. And then brand marketing, which is like throwing money out the window and just hoping that, you know, someone uses your name and remembers your name when they need to buy something. And a good example of that would be like an insurance commercial, right? You hear Geico on the radio, you'll never be able to say, unless you attach a promo code to it, then it's direct marketing, right? But like I heard a radio station, now I'm going to go buy Geico insurance. That's not likely. It's brand marketing, keeps everything top of mind. So I would just recommend that entrepreneurs, you know, learn how to use both methods to their advantage. And the sooner you harness the power of each of those, the faster and I think more effectively you can leverage your position in the marketing place.
Yeah, that's absolutely huge. I appreciate you for breaking that down because, again, I think as we talked about, before, in your secret sauces, knowledge is definitely power, and understanding that just because you're doing marketing, that knowing what type of marketing is probably just as important as what you're doing. And I appreciate you for sharing that because you get a lot of more awareness and I think empowerment, for lack of a better term, and understanding, okay, I'm putting my marketing dollars towards this, and this is the type of marketing. So this is how I can measure it or not even measure it, maybe even, and understand the pros and cons of each is absolutely huge.
Yeah, and then you're not wondering like, did this work? Did it not work? Right? It's about being intentional, and I think the more intentional you are, and I'm not saying you don't want to make mistakes, but the less mistakes you'll make that are ones that you can't learn from. So
Absolutely, absolutely. And so I wanted to ask you now for what I call a CEO nugget. So this could be a word of wisdom or piece of advice. It might be something you would tell a client, or if you hopped into a time machine, you might tell your younger business self.
I think for me, I would just say, just do the hard stuff first. Every time you wake up in the morning, you have a finite amount of energy every day. In fact, your body will only give you a few, like 2, 3, or 4 bursts of glycogen, which is how you switch your sugar levels to energy, right? Your body sends out these little signals of energy. You get the biggest shot in the morning, and you have the most energy in the morning, and that's when people strangely enough are the laziest. Like they don't want to do things that are difficult right away, so they'll start from the easy part of their inbox or whatever's left over from yesterday. You got to tackle the most difficult tasks first, because as the day progresses, you're going to have less energy and you're going to be more inclined to want to end the day or move on to other things, right? So I think that's one of my biggest things, is just start with the hard stuff first, and then it's like I said earlier, lean into your discomforts, right? Because the best stuff is right on the other side of that discomfort.
Yeah, I love both of those nuggets. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the book, Eat That Frog, but I think a lot of it is, yeah, a lot of it is along the lines of doing the hard things first, because I think, just like you said so well, we don't realize that we don't have infinite energy. And a lot of times towards the end of the day, we have less energy. So taking care of those hardest things first, as we were talking about building momentum, it allows you that momentum to start tackling other things. And then it carries itself on into weeks and months and years and businesses and so on and so forth. So being able to kind of do that and understand the power of that is absolutely huge.
Absolutely. I agree with you there. I'm going to look up that book too, because the title's got me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I wanted to ask you now my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And we're hoping to have different quote unquote CEOs on the show. So Troy, what does being a CEO mean to you?
I had to think about this question when I saw it, but I would say this is one of those answers that's diplomatic, but I would say it depends. You know what I mean? Like that's my answer. It depends. I firmly, in general, believe that to be an effective leader in any team or in any capacity, it means you have to adapt and remain agile. To me, that means you can't be confined to a simple description. So it depends. That's like when somebody asks you, what's your leadership type? What's your leadership style? I just say it depends. That's always going to change, and I can't put it into one little box. But if you're going to quote me, just say it depends.
Nice. Well, I appreciate that, Troy. It's so funny that you said that, because I was reading something and it said like the true definition of leadership or power is not a rock, it's water, because water is permeable, it's agile, all of those things that you just said. And I think especially during times like this, we realize that the true leaders, the true quote unquote CEOs, entrepreneurs, and business owners are the people that subscribe to the it depends. I'm going to do what I need to do depending on whatever all these other kind of circumstances are. And I think when we step into that, it's not that you're not being, a CEO, it's that you are, and you're aware that that might change tomorrow or it might change next week. And you're able to pivot and change towards what you need to be to get to where you ultimately want to be.
Agreed. And with that water, that's the Bruce Lee mentality, and, be like water. But what I love about water, man, is it's funny you mentioned that, because water is like one of my favorite things. It's like, it does everything in the world, and it asks for nothing. It doesn't need any external energy. It doesn't have some prime motivator to do what it does. Its essential goal is to nourish and keep things alive without question. It just doesn't ask for anything in return, and that's something else I want to add too, is learn, how to, and maybe this could be covered in the anything additional part, but learn how to help people without asking for anything in return, because that sometimes is so powerful. You don't know how powerful your actions, impact other people's life. And there's that thought where people just often have ulterior motives. And, like me, people ask me to consult on things all the time. I don't send them an invoice. I send them a recommendation and then a list of reasons why maybe I could help them later or something like that. But I don't believe in, I believe in something for nothing. And that's not every time, but you have to be like water sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, sure. I truly appreciate that. And I wanted to see, for people that are listening to this, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I think the best way to get a hold of me is honestly through my email, which is troy@seattletalentbuying.com. You can also reach me directly on my cell phone, which is 425-530-9913. And those are probably the two best ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will have the links and information as well in the show notes so that everybody can get a hold of you. But I love that last point that you brought up, because I think so many times when we don't have a giver's mentality, you're just giving in order to give, not give in order to receive. I think it creates we're talking about momentum so much, creates a tremendous momentum towards a better place, a better business environment, a better world, and so on and so forth, when people just give and want to kind of step into that. Because I think that's something that sometimes is missing. So many times people are looking to try to get something back, but when you do that, really phenomenal things happen. So I appreciate you so much for giving so much to this episode and all the awesome work that you're doing. And I appreciate your time, of course.
Absolutely, I'm happy to be part of it. And in regards to the giving, one of my digital mentors, Gary V, you've probably heard of him. He's a big fan of the jab, uppercut, give, take kind of mentality, and I think that's really cool. But I got one more thing that I wanted to share here, kind of as the wrap up, and I encourage people to approach every situation, every engagement. It's an exchange between people, like 100% of the time, someone's trying to get something out of it, one way or the other. And if you know what you're getting into, you'll have better conversations and interactions if you understand what they're based off of. Most of the time, it's somebody needing help. And there's two reasons why anybody wants your help or, is needing help. And the first reason is, or will help you, sorry. And, someone will help you if they like you, which is great. But the other reason someone will help you is if you have something that they want. So if you go into each situation and you figure out, like, is this person going to help me or am I going to help them? Figure out which category you or they fall into. And you might be able to better control the outcome, but more than anything, you'll better understand what that engagement is about, right? And it's great if they like you. It's cool if you have something that they want, but it takes that veil of mystery off and you just kind of have a deeper interaction, I feel. So just a little extra nugget of information there, I guess.
Yeah, I appreciate you for sharing that. And you mentioned Gary Vee. I think one of the big things about Gary Vee is he speaks, I think in the exact same book, he talks a lot about knowing the kind of language on different social media platforms, knowing the communication, knowing what's to come. And to me, that kind of spoke as well to that, because when you're going into any type of interaction, if you know what a win is for the other person and you know potentially what a win is for yourself, you know how to kind of set that situation up for success. So I love that last nugget, because to me, it also speaks to that of knowing the language, knowing what success is, and knowing how to set yourself up to get there.
Absolutely, and there might be some people that say, oh, it's not that black and white. People will help you for other reasons, but I challenge you to think about it next time. Next time, anybody that's watching this, think about your interactions when somebody you're asking for help. If they say no or yes, think about why they're saying no or yes. It's, most likely because they don't like you or you don't have something that they want. So that's not negative. That's actually, I guess, realistic and just being, I guess, truthful.
Absolutely. A lot of times people can call it human psychology. Just knowing people, knowing what makes them tick and what motivates them is entirely important to business and life and everything in between and all around.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Troy, just for people that are going to listen to this bonus aspect, could you give us your information again so people know how best to get a hold of you?
Sure. The best way to get a hold of me is through email, which is troy@seattletalentbuying.com, or you can reach out direct through cell phone, which is 425-530-9913. Thank you.
Awesome. We'll have that information in the show notes as well, too. But thank you so much again, Troy. I truly appreciate it. And I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
Thanks, Gresham. Take care.